Evening. My name is Andrew Seruyange. I'm discussing advanced applications design and development using VBNet. This is coursework 3, and the assignment is certification presentation. Introduction. This is a certificate I did in introduction setup. Programming with Visual Basic, Introduction, Setup, and Basics. Here I learned how to use Visual Basic online using the rextester.com website. I learned Visual Basic Setup on Windows, console output. Visual Basic.net console.writeLine prints a message to the console. Read line will get user input and read key handles key presses immediately. Console output is achieved by using the console.write or console.writeLine method. Comments are added to Visual Basic code by using a single quotation mark. The keyword dim is used to create variables in Visual Basic. Integer data type is used to store whole number values. The long data type is used to store larger values than the integer data type can store. The char data type is used to store characters, while the string data type stores text. The value of variables can be changed, but the value of constants cannot. Directives are used to create lines of code that are run before the code for a program is compiled. Arrays are a collection of data of the same type. Creating an array involves specifying the array name, data type, size, and populating the array. For each loops can be used to iterate through arrays and assign values to an array. Hash tables are used to store data in key-value pairs. Like arrays, hash tables can be looped over with for each loops. Sorted lists are like hash tables, but have their data sorted by their keys. Visual Basic stacks store data such that the last entry is retrieved first. Choose data collections that store data in such a way that entries are retrieved in the same order they were added. Subs are very similar to functions. The differentiating factor is that subs do not return a value. The second certificate is done in Introduction to Visual Basic Revised. And here I learned how to start a new project in Visual Basic. At the Visual Studio installation, you can select the different features that you would like, such as Visual C++, C# to cater to the type of project you are creating. Errors are shown in the error list. You can select an error in this list and you will automatically be brought to the line of code where the error is present. It is important that you have accurate spelling when you are writing your code, as wrong spelling may result in errors in your code. We cannot write the code wherever we like, as writing the code in different places can have different outcomes. Indentation can be used to make code easier to read and relate codes together. Indentation will not affect the way your code appears when you run the project. Visual Studio will automatically add color to certain aspects of code to help the readability of the code. Code is defined inside the code block by inserting sub or function followed by end sub or end function. Alternatively, you can type module followed by end module. The code should appear between those module and end module. It is important to place the message within double quotation marks in the code. Writing code with Visual Basic. Project templates provide a great starting point for different types of applications that you want to build. A solution explorer is an important feature of Visual Studio, as it is the main navigation device to the other files and settings that comprise a program. By default, Visual Studio saves projects in the current user's documents folder on their computer. Visual Studio is the preferred way to open an .sin file. Camel casing can be used to distinguish when one word begins and another ends. Another certificate is in Visual Basic, working with classes, scope, and namespaces. Classes, scope, and modifiers. The codes that you write in your methods are ultimately defining the classes of the application. Every method that we use from the .NET Framework class library is just a class, and that's why it's part of the class library. Every time we create a new instance of a class, we have a new object that is distinct and separate from the other instances of that class. It lives on its own. We can create many instances of a single class by giving each instance of a class a different identifier, so it is distinct from every other item based on the same class in the computer's memory. The .NET Framework run time keeps the memory region clear and gets rid of stuff it no longer needs. It does this by counting references or counting how many handles you are actually holding on to. We can create a variable that can hold a reference, but we do not have to create a new reference necessarily. We can just copy the reference from another object. Once variables go out of scope, then those variables' values are no longer accessible. There are a number of methods in the .NET Framework class library that we do not have access to because they are hidden behind the private accessibility modifier. Working with namespaces, the framework class library is so large that its developers split it up into multiple files. This library code Files are called assemblies. All the classes and methods are split up into different assemblies. When you create your own project, you are creating the basis for a .NET assembly as well. There are two kinds of assembly, an executable assembly and a library assembly. My namespace is great for getting information about the computer that you are currently running on, working with files and folders on the computer, working with command line arguments into your command window application, and working with configuration files. In larger projects, you might want to keep multiple projects to the same solution when they are somewhat related. Reference counting refers to how many references are still attached to a given object. The .NET framework will count the references. If the count is 0, then it will remove that object from memory. Whenever we declare a variable inside of a block of code, that variable is only alive and accessible from the life of that block of code. This means that whenever that code has finished executing, the variable defined inside of that block of code is no longer accessible. Its values are disposed of by the .NET Framework runtime. Working with the namespaces continue, the .NET Framework will continue the references if the count is 0. Never we declare a variable inside of a block. Oh, sorry, this is a bit repeated. Visual Basic working with collections and event-driven programming revised. Collections, links, and enumeration. Generic collections are called so because you have to define the type of the collection to make it specific. When we create a new item in our dictionary, we must give it a key and a value. A key is similar to a word in a normal English dictionary, while a value is similar to a description of a word in an English dictionary. You can index into the dictionary by supplying the key to get a specific instance of the entire object. Using multiple curly braces can be confusing, but you can select a curly brace, and whichever curly brace you have selected, Visual Studio will show its corresponding beginning or ending brace by highlighting the brace in gray. By using the AND key, you are able to add additional filtering criteria in a link query. Enumeration is a data type that limits and constrains all possible values to only those that are valid for an application. Event-driven programming and handling exceptions. Compilation errors can be fixed before a user releases the application to others. You should always code defensively through the try, catch, and try statements in Visual Basics. When you release an application to the end user, ensure you are accounting for all the potential problems that may arise. You should strive to examine every part of your application that relies on some exterior resource that is not directly in your control as developer. You should then apply the try-catch finally judiciously in those parts of your application that you cannot control. Event-driven programming is at the heart of most of Microsoft presentation APIs, whether you are building web or Windows applications. Events allow you as a developer to plug in and respond by handling key moments or events in the life cycle of an application's execution. An object will declare an event. The developer can then attach code or add handlers. The various events that are raised by objects and write any custom code in response to them events. We can take control adding or removing event handlers to specific events by using the add handler and remove handler keyword and pointing them to the address of methods that we implement in our source code. The references are here and the very topics I chose. One is programming with Visual Basic, Introduction to Visual Basic Revised, Visual Basic working with classes, scope, and namespaces. The Visual Basic working with collections and event-driven programming revised. Here are the certificates, programming with Visual Basic certificate, Introduction to Visual Basic Revised certificate, and Visual Basic working with classes, scope, and namespaces certificate. Visual Basic working with collections and event-driven programming revised certificate. That is the end.